A heartless director repeatedly mistreated a horse behind the scenes of a movie set, thinking his cruel actions would remain unseen. Yet, amidst his tyrannical behavior, he failed to realize that Keanu Reeves had been quietly observing him. Unlike the rest of the production staff, Keanu was not someone to remain silent. Keanu Reeves steered his car along the winding roads of Santa Clarita. The steady hum of the engine contrasted sharply with the stillness of the surrounding countryside. As he neared his destination, the outline of a large rectangular structure appeared on the horizon, its industrial appearance starkly interrupting the natural beauty around it. Slowing down, Keanu entered the parking lot of what seemed to be an abandoned storage building. A faded sign above the main entrance bore the words Willow Creek Storage Facility, the chipped paint serving as a ghostly reminder of the building's former use. As he stepped out of his car, the crunch of gravel underfoot broke the tranquil silence. Taking in the scene, Keanu noted the scattered wooden pallets and aged equipment littering the area. When he finally entered the main hall, the contrast between the exterior and interior of the building was striking. Inside, a vast, cavernous space stretched before him. High ceilings with exposed beams supported industrial lights suspended by chains. Plywood walls draped in black fabric formed makeshift studio spaces, while green screens and various backdrops transformed parts of the industrial hall into film sets. Scanning the busy scene, Keanu's gaze landed on a familiar figure. Elliot Grayson stood in the center of the hall, deep in discussion with a visibly stressed production assistant. Even from afar, Keanu noticed the weight of responsibility etched into her posture. When Elliot's eyes finally met Keanu's, her professional demeanor briefly slipped, replaced by a flash of relief and warmth. Quickly excusing herself, she navigated the maze of equipment and bustling crew with practiced ease. "Keanu," she called, her voice tinged with excitement and gratitude. As she reached him, they exchanged a firm handshake that turned into a quick, affectionate hug. Leaning in, Elliot whispered, her voice full of emotion, "Thank you for coming all the way here for this movie, and for me. I know working with Martin Langston, the director, isn't easy given your history, but it means more to me than you can imagine." Keanu pulled back and gave her a genuine smile. "Don't mention it, Elliot. I'd do anything for you. Working with you has always been a pleasure, and I'm excited to see what we can create here." Despite the friendly exchange, Keanu noticed the tension lingering in Elliot's body language. Something more was going on, and he suspected he was about to find out. As the chaos of the set buzzed around them, Elliot gently guided Keanu toward a quieter corner of the warehouse. Her demeanor shifted subtly, her shoulders tensed, and her eyes darted around as if ensuring they weren't overheard. Once they reached a secluded spot near a stack of equipment cases, Elliot leaned against one, her voice just above a whisper. "There's something you need to know, Keanu," she began, her gaze locking with his, filled with unspoken urgency. "I'm not just acting in this film," she confessed, her voice carrying weight. "I'm co-producing it with a private investor." Keanu raised his eyebrows slightly at the news, but said nothing, sensing more was coming. He wasn't wrong. "We're planning to announce this in 4 weeks," Elliot continued, her tone tinged with both determination and unease. She ran a hand through her hair, a nervous habit Keanu recognized from their past projects. "It's critical that we nail today's scenes. My co-producer is extremely particular about the quality of the footage." Keanu nodded slowly, processing the added stakes. "I appreciate you sharing this, Elliot," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "You can rely on me to give my best. I understand the pressure you're under." At the mention of the director's name, Elliot's expression tightened just slightly. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, carefully choosing her words. "About that, I know you and Martin have had your differences in the past. Are you sure you're okay working with him?" Keanu took a deep breath before responding, his tone steady. "I don't hold a grudge from our past argument," he said, though the slight tension in his jaw suggested there was more to the story. "But I won't lie to you, Elliot. He's still difficult to work with. However, I'm committed to giving my best. This project clearly means a lot to you, and I'm here to support that." Elliot's hand reached out, squeezing Keanu's arm in gratitude, her relief palpable. "Thank you, Keanu. I know you'll do your best, as always. Your professionalism is one of the reasons I was so eager to have you on board." With the air between them cleared, Elliot led Keanu toward the makeshift preparation area at the back of the cavernous hall. As they walked, she continued to fill him in on more details of the production, her voice low but animated as she described the unique challenges and opportunities the unconventional location presented. The preparation area was buzzing with activity, makeup artists and costume designers working efficiently in the limited space. Elliot explained that Martin and the main crew were wrapping up a studio shoot before joining them for Keanu's scenes with the horse. "I'm looking forward to meeting the horse," Keanu remarked as a makeup artist began his work. The process was minimal and quick, reflecting both the production's tight schedule and the casual nature of the scenes planned. As Keanu was transformed, Elliot remained nearby, her steady presence offering comfort amidst the chaos. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of excitement and tension, energy Keanu knew all too well from his past shoots. His mind wandered briefly to past experiences with Martin Langston, remembering their last collaboration, which had ended in a heated argument. The director's perfectionism had bordered on tyranny, and Keanu had stood up to him, leading to a rift between them. Now, years later, he wondered if Martin had softened, or if he would find the director unchanged. He was ready for either, determined to maintain his professionalism no matter what awaited him. As the afternoon wore on, Keanu was led outside behind the warehouse. The transition from the cool, dim interior to the warm, sun-drenched exterior was jarring, and he blinked rapidly, adjusting his eyes to the brightness. Before him was a small, fenced area where a magnificent brown horse stood drinking from a trough. The horse's coat gleamed in the sunlight, muscles rippling with each movement. Keanu realized this must be Stella, his co-star for the upcoming scenes. Two men stood nearby, watching the horse with attentive eyes. As Keanu approached, one of them stepped forward, extending his hand in greeting. "Mr. Reeves," the man said warmly. "I'm Berto, the animal caregiver for the production. It's a pleasure to meet you." He gestured to his companion, a younger man with a weathered face. "This is Rel, a representative from the farm where we rented Stella." Keanu shook hands with both men, his gaze repeatedly drawn to Stella. There was something majestic about her, a quiet dignity that commanded respect. Drawing from his past experience with horses and his personal interest, Keanu began moving toward her slowly and deliberately. His body language was open and non-threatening, each step purposeful. Keanu knew the importance of this first interaction. Horses were incredibly perceptive, and the trust he built now would be crucial for their scenes together. Berto, watching Keanu approach, produced a small bag from his pocket. "We brought some treats for you to give her," he explained, handing Keanu a few carrots and apple slices. "It's a good way to break the ice, so to speak." Keanu accepted the treats with a nod of thanks and continued his approach. Speaking in soft, soothing tones as he neared Stella, he murmured, "Hello, beautiful." Her ears perked up at the sound, and her liquid brown eyes fixed on him with intelligent curiosity. "We're going to be working together today," Keanu continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hope we can be friends." He held out a carrot, palm flat, allowing Stella to choose whether to accept it. For a moment, the horse regarded him, nostrils flaring as she caught the scent of the treat. Then, with gentle delicacy, she took the carrot from his hand. As Stella crunched on the treat, Keanu continued speaking to her in soothing tones, praising her beauty and explaining the collaboration they were about to embark upon. To an outsider, it might have seemed silly to talk to a horse this way, but Keanu knew the importance of establishing a connection, allowing Stella to become comfortable with his presence and voice. The moment felt peaceful, a stark contrast to the activity inside the warehouse. Keanu felt a sense of calm as he bonded with Stella, his natural affinity for animals evident in every gentle touch and soft word. He offered her another apple slice, smiling as her velvety lips brushed his palm. However, the peaceful moment was abruptly interrupted by the arrival of Martin Langston. The director's presence shifted the atmosphere, introducing a subtle tension that hadn't been there before. Keanu felt Stella tense under his hand, picking up on the change in energy. "Ah, Keanu," Martin called out, his voice overly jovial. "I see you've met our star." Keanu turned to face the director, keeping one hand on Stella's neck, both a calming gesture for the horse and a grounding one for himself. "Martin," he greeted, his tone polite but reserved. Martin approached, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. In his late 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a tan that suggested more hours spent on golf courses than film sets, he greeted Keanu with a rehearsed, "I wanted to apologize for our past conflicts. Water under the bridge, I hope." Before Keanu could respond, Martin clapped his hands together, shifting his demeanor to one of impatience. "We really should begin filming immediately. We're on a tight schedule, and daylight's burning." Keanu nodded, sensing the urgency in Martin's tone. "Of course. Where will we be shooting?" "The location for our outdoor scene is at Willow Creek Farm," Martin explained, gesturing vaguely toward the horizon. "Just a 10-minute walk from here." The crew's already setting up. As the team began preparing, loading equipment into production vehicles, an idea struck Keanu. He looked at Stella, then back at Martin. "Instead of loading her into the truck, what if I ride her to the farm? It could save time and help her warm up to my presence." Martin's reaction was swift, barely concealed. He rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath, "This is not a recreation." But he caught himself quickly, masking his disapproval with a strained smile. Keanu, noticing the reaction, added, "It'll let us bond, and we can shoot right away once we reach the farm. It could save time in the long run." Martin hesitated for a moment, sighing in resignation. "You do what you think is best," he said dismissively, before turning and entering one of the vans. As the production team departed for the farm, Keanu turned back to Stella. He approached her once more, offering another apple slice. "What do you say, girl?" he asked softly. "Shall we take a ride?" Stella nickered softly, accepting the treat. Keanu took this as a sign and, with Rel. She didn't respond immediately, instead focusing on Stella with a calm intensity. After a moment, she glanced up at Martin, her gaze sharp. "These injuries aren't typical of routine work," she said slowly, "especially not for a well-trained animal like this. Someone has been rough with her." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Keanu could feel the weight of the accusation hanging in the air, and his suspicion of Martin deepened. Martin, however, shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. "I assure you I would never," Martin began, but Dr. Vivian cut him off. "Let's not play games," she said firmly. "The evidence is clear. Stella's injuries are consistent with neglect and mistreatment, not simple accidents. If you or anyone else on this set is responsible, this needs to be addressed immediately, or I'll be forced to report it." Keanu stood there, his mind racing. It was clear now that Stella's distress wasn't a result of simple mishaps, but something far darker. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. If Martin was involved, it would complicate everything: the production, his relationship with the director, and even the welfare of the animal. But for now, There was no solid proof, and Keanu couldn't make accusations without it. He glanced over at Martin, who was visibly sweating, his eyes darting around as though looking for an escape. Dr. Vivian continued to examine Stella, her hands working with practiced care. "We'll need to give her some time to recover," she stated, her voice softer now. "She's been through a lot. I recommend halting any further filming until we've assessed the full extent of her injuries." Martin, though clearly frustrated, nodded reluctantly. "Fine," he muttered. "But make it quick. We can't afford to fall behind schedule." Keanu felt a pang of anger, but he suppressed it. For now, Stella's well-being had to come first, and he would stand by her. As Martin turned to leave, Keanu exchanged a look with Dr. Vivian, silently expressing his gratitude. "Take good care of her," Keanu said quietly, his voice firm. "I will," Dr. Vivian replied, her gaze softening as she returned her attention to the horse. As Martin stalked off to attend to other matters, Keanu remained by Stella's side, his resolve growing stronger. Something was wrong, and he wouldn't let it go. The more he observed Martin, the more he realized that this was far from over. But he was prepared for whatever came next, determined to protect Stella and ensure that justice was served, no matter the cost. The tension was far from resolved, but at least for now, Keanu had made the right choice. He only hoped the truth would come to light before it was too late. Keanu's mind was elsewhere. The uneasy feeling in his gut was growing stronger, and his suspicions about Martin were beginning to feel less like instinct and more like undeniable truth. There was something off about the way the director had acted, from his dismissive attitude toward Stella's well-being to his increasingly erratic behavior. Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that Martin was hiding something that went beyond mere frustration with the delays. As Rel led Keanu through the stables, showing him the available horses, Keanu's attention was divided. His eyes kept darting back to the road, half expecting Martin to show up again. He couldn't shake the nagging thought that the director might be trying to avoid something, or perhaps cover his tracks. "Keanu," Rel's voice pulled him back to the present. "This one's a good match. Well-trained, calm. I think you'd get along with her." Keanu nodded absently, his mind still racing. He ran a hand along the dark-coated horse's neck, feeling the strength beneath her skin. She was a fine animal, but his thoughts were on Stella, and on the situation with Martin. "I'll take her," Keanu said, his voice firm, though his mind was elsewhere. He needed to get back to the warehouse to find answers, to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. As they made their way back, Keanu's unease deepened. Martin was supposed to be following them, but he hadn't appeared. Keanu quickened his pace, eager to return to the warehouse and check on Stella. The thought of her being left in a vulnerable state, even with Dr. Vivian and the staff watching over her, gnawed at him. By the time they reached the warehouse again, Martin was nowhere to be seen. Keanu frowned, exchanging a look with Rel. "He's not back yet?" Keanu asked, his tone tense. Rel shook his head, his expression mirroring Keanu's concern. "No, and I don't like this. We should check on Stella." They headed straight for the main hall, the air charged with a sense of urgency. As they entered, Keanu noticed that the room felt different, quieter, more subdued. Dr. Vivian was there, but her expression wasn't one of simple professional concern. There was something else in her eyes, something that made Keanu's heart race. "Dr. Vivian?" Keanu asked, his voice laced with concern. She glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. "I've been monitoring Stella. She's resting now, but I'm worried. Something's not right. And it's not just with her." Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. His instincts had been right all along. Something had happened here, and the answers were within reach. As he looked around, He realized with growing certainty that the truth was just waiting to be uncovered. The set, the horses, Martin's behavior. It all seemed connected in a way that Keanu couldn't yet fully explain, but he was determined to find out. Whatever it took. Skeptical. Martin's face was flushed with panic, his eyes darting between Keanu and the approaching officers. His hands were shaking slightly as he tried to compose himself, but his words were frantic. "I've been working with this guy for days," Martin exclaimed, pointing at Keanu with exaggerated frustration. "And now, out of nowhere, he's accusing me of hurting the horse, which is ridiculous. I'm the director. This is all just a part of the drama he's making up." Keanu remained calm, his stance unwavering. "I called you because I witnessed what Martin was doing to Stella. He was abusing her, putting his foot on her head when she was sedated, and verbally attacking the animal," he explained, his voice steady. "Dr. Vivian and Berto can confirm the horse's condition, and you can check the footage I set up in the main hall." The officers exchanged a look, the skepticism in their eyes slowly turning to concern. One officer turned to Martin, his voice sharp. "Is that true? Were you harming the horse?" Martin opened his mouth, but his words faltered. He seemed to be searching for a way to justify himself, but the weight of the accusation and the presence of the officers made it difficult to fabricate a convincing lie. I was just checking on her," Martin finally stammered. "She's ruining the production. You have to understand. This movie is everything. But that doesn't mean I—" "Save it," one of the officers interrupted, stepping forward to place a hand on Martin's shoulder. "We'll handle this. Right now, we're more concerned about the animal's safety." Keanu took a deep breath, watching as the officers turned their attention to Martin. He had done what needed to be done. The truth was finally coming to light, and it wasn't going to be easy for Martin to talk his way out of this one. The second officer stepped away to radio for animal control, while the first officer, still keeping his eye on Martin, approached Keanu. "Do you have any evidence?" he asked. Keanu nodded, pulling out his phone. "The camera I set up in the hall. It recorded everything that happened between Martin and Stella. The footage will speak for itself." As the officer reviewed the footage, Martin's desperation grew. He started pacing, his hands tugging at his hair as he muttered incoherently. It was clear that the weight of the situation was sinking in. "Listen," Martin called out, his voice cracking. "I didn't hurt her. I was trying to protect the movie, protect the budget." His eyes darted around, but no one was buying his excuse anymore. Keanu's mind was still racing. He knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be legal battles, possibly even criminal charges. But for now, Stella was safe. The truth had come out, and Martin's hold on the production was slipping fast. "We'll get this sorted," the officer said, handing Keanu his phone back after reviewing the footage. "And we'll make sure the horse gets the care she deserves." As the officers began to take control of the situation, Keanu took one last glance at Stella, who was now resting peacefully in her temporary stable. It was hard to shake the anger that still simmered inside him, but the knowledge that Stella would be safe and that the truth was being upheld brought him a sense of calm. "Thank you," Keanu said softly to Dr. Vivian and Berto as they approached him. "For everything." Dr. Vivian gave him a reassuring nod. "We'll make sure she gets the care she needs," she promised. Keanu turned toward the exit, his mind still reeling. He knew there was much more to the story than what had just unfolded. Martin might have been the one who crossed the line, but there were others involved in the production who might have known more than they were letting on. For now, though, Keanu had taken the first step in righting the wrongs, and he wasn't going to stop until the truth came to light in full. The tension that had gripped the warehouse finally seemed to dissipate as Stella was safely in the care of the team at Willow Creek Farm. Keanu watched quietly, his heart still heavy with the weight of the events that had unfolded that day. As the truck pulled away from the lot, he couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and sadness. The battle had been won, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would take time to heal. He couldn't shake the images of Martin's cruelty, the coldness in his eyes as he threatened not just the horse, but the very core of what Keanu held dear. His belief in decency, in compassion, in doing the right thing even when it was hard. But seeing Stella's gradual calm, the tentative steps she took into her new, safe space, brought a spark of hope. Keanu had seen firsthand the damage that could be done when someone in a position of power allowed their ego and their anger to dictate their actions. He had seen it in Martin, but also in the film industry, in how animals were often treated as mere props. But this was different. Stella wasn't just a horse in a film. She was a living, breathing being deserving of kindness, care, and respect. As he stood by the stable door, watching Stella adjust to her new surroundings, he whispered to her, "One day at a time, girl. We'll get through this together." It was a simple promise, but one that held all the sincerity of the connection that had begun to form between them, a bond forged through compassion, respect, and the desire to make things right. Keanu knew there would be challenges ahead, especially as the future of the film was uncertain. But he had made a choice. He would continue to support Stella, make sure her recovery was a priority, and stand against the abuse he had witnessed. It was a fight he was willing to take on, not just for Stella, but for every animal that had suffered in silence for far too long. In that quiet moment, as the evening sun dipped below the horizon, Keanu felt a sense of peace settle over him. The day's chaos had led him to a place of understanding, that the true power of compassion, of standing up for what was right, lay not in grand gestures but in small, consistent actions, one day at a time. And with that, Keanu turned away from the stable, ready to face the next chapter of this journey. Stella's healing had just begun, but so had his own.